How the hell am I supposed to start this video? This is a game that I really want to give a good review. I want to be able to look back on this video in a few years' time and think that I did a good job. So without further ado, welcome retro gamers to Take It or Leave It. Oh boy, this is going to be the video for me. This is going to be the video where I have to give it my all. Usually in these reviews, I like to temporarily keep my opinion secret and pretend to build an opinion on the game, and then eventually conclude with giving it a final score. However, this will be one of the exceptions, and that's entirely because Spyro 2 Ripto's Rage is my favorite game of all time. Yeah. I'm pretty sure you now understand why this is going to be the video on this channel. I am very excited to talk about this one and explain why it means so much to me, so do expect to see some personal bias during this video, and don't worry, I will talk about the issues that this game holds because, like anything, it's not perfect. Anyway, you would have clicked on this video to see me talk about Spyro 2, so that's where you're gonna get. Luckily, development won't take long to discuss, since there is pretty much nothing to mention about Spyro 2's development. There really isn't anything to say other than the intentions behind this game. Ted Price himself said it was okay to be crazy. Basically, he's saying, hey, you know what we did in Spyro 1? Child's play. Now we mean business. We're going into 5th gear, taking our foot off the clutch, flooring the gas, cutting the brakes, while going into fucking overdrive. Woo! I absolutely fucking love this behind the scenes video. Not only does it have its moments where it's legitimately funny, intentional or not.
In Spyro 2, the bosses are big. They're badass. Can I say badass?
But it really shows that every single person who worked on this game genuinely enjoyed working on it. Each person present in this video showed just how passionate they were while making this masterpiece. Also, a special shout out to their epic game of Broomball. Side note, while writing this video, I had no idea until now that Broomball was an actual sport. Alright. But that is, again, all that I can say about Spyro 2's development. Insomniac got together, they made it, done. So yeah, now for the actual game that they made. Let's warp through the Avalar portal and glide over to Spyro 2 Ripto's Rage. We're gliding with Spyro's wings. What do you want from me? Spyro 2 begins on a very depressing looking rainy day, with Spyro doing a damn good job describing what the weather's like in the UK.
Is this rain ever gonna stop? I've forgotten what the sun looks like.
Obviously, the only way to rectify this personal issue is to go on vacation to none other than Dragon Shores. Meanwhile, in a place called Avalar, we are introduced to 3, or should I say, 3 1/4, I guess, characters. Allura the goat.
I'm a fawn, you dork.
Hey! That's not nice! Hunter the cheetah, Zoe the fairy, and the professor. That's seriously all that he's called. He's just the professor. How much more shit of a name could you give your child than that? That's like calling your kid Chef. What these guys are doing is purposely redirecting the Dragon Shores portal Spyro just went through to Glimmer, the area in Avalar that they are in. Side note, for the first time on this show, I would like to discuss the American and European box arts for this game because I just want to. I love the American box art of this game. It's simple, cool looking, and the title does a good job with showcasing what the game's plot is all about. Spyro 2 Ripto's Rage sounds fucking awesome. I'm mentioning this because the European box art changed the name entirely, and in my opinion, for the worst. I do really like everything else though. I love how it takes place in Skilo's Badlands, an actual level. I love Spyro charging towards the camera while an enemy is chasing after him, and I love the blur effects on Spyro's feet to make it look like we really are in the middle of the action. But the title sucks, mainly because it makes no sense and relevance with the game's plot. Spyro 2 Gateway to Glimmer. It rolls off the tongue, I guess, but Glimmer is the first level of the game. The plot does not revolve around it. Could they have at least called it Gateway to Avalar or something? That would have made a lot more sense. I just don't get why they named the game's subtitle after the first area of the game you go to. That's like calling the sequel to Uncharted, Uncharted 2 Boat Ride to Turkey. But at least this is better than the Japanese box art. This looks terrible! Why the hell does it look like a bootleg cover? I hate this! Anyway, back on track. The reason why they needed a dragon is because they wanted to get rid of the bad guy of this game, Ripto. I mean, this is called Ripto's Rage for a reason. Ripto rages. Like an 11-year-old Minecraft player. Anyway, the professor gets the portal to work, and out comes Spyro. Spyro starts understandably asking questions, and after a civil conversation.
You're a dragon?
You got a problem with that, pussycat?
Ripto then appears and destroys the portal. Guess what? Ripto really hates dragons.
I hate dragons! Yeah!
After being zapped by Zoe and accidentally knocked off of Gulp by Crush, he loses his scepter. After running away, like a bitch, Elora then explains to Spyro that they have to get rid of Ripto. After level 1, Spyro and Elora meet yet again, and Elora explains more about what Spyro has to do. Spyro needs to collect Avalar's talismans, which are all magical to defeat Ripto. There are also the orbs, but they are currently not the main priority. Later on in the game, you see how Ripto managed to get to Avalar to begin with. After finishing a portal, the professor needs coordinates in order for the portal to work, and the brilliant thing is that Hunter immediately uses his date of birth as the coordinates, which just so happens to be exactly where Ripto is coming from. Ripto then wants to take over the world, but thankfully Elora manages to have the fairies disable the portal before Ripto has the chance to possibly send some of his henchmen over. The rest of the story basically is just Ripto trying to take over Avalar and Spyro needing to stop him. I could talk about the ending, but you know how these videos go. I don't talk about the ending until I get to the ending of the video.
I fucking love Spyro 2's story. Is it a perfect story? Jesus fucking Christ, no. If you look at this game's story critically, then there is a lot of shit wrong with it. But there are just so many other things in this game's story that I love in spite of it. In fact, it'd be easier to talk about what the story does wrong. Plus, I did go on for a while about what I didn't like about Spyro 1's story, so it's only fair that I give this the same treatment. Gotta level the playing field a little bit.
First things first, and something that I just realized while writing this video, is that they never explained why the professor was building a portal in Winter Tundra in the first place. Sure, it was used for another reason by the end, but what was the original intent behind it? Secondly, who the hell is the leader of Avalar? Now sure, you could point to Elora, but the game never really specifies anything about Elora being a leader to this world. There is kind of a hint that that's the case, but they never say anything more than that. Thirdly, they could have easily got Crush out of Avalar if they just simply waited for him to go get Ripto's bags and then deactivate the portal. Just saying. Last criticism, you're telling me that Ripto did damage to this place, and yet his name never gets mentioned once outside the hub world? I am fully aware that in the prototype version of this game, the intro-level cutscenes were originally narrated by Elora telling you about how Ripto was involved in the level's disasters. As a result, some people defend this flaw because of these. The thing is though, if this wasn't the final game, then it would have fixed the issue. But it's not. Here's the thing, if the final game doesn't have the thing that you defend it with, then people have every right to complain about Ripto not being shown to be doing anything. Anyway, I've complained long enough, so why do I love this story in spite of all this? Well, let's talk about it. Una. The charm. These cutscenes are just so charming. I love this game's sense of humor. Don't get me wrong, this isn't Insomniac's funniest game. I'd say that would go to Ratchet & Clank 2 and 3. But this game's humor is somewhat similar to the kind of humor used in those games, despite it not being the same thing. I just love the intro and outro level cutscenes, but I will talk about them more in the levels segment, since I think that's more of an appropriate time for that discussion. So let's move on to the voice acting. Voice acting is something that I never really talk about in the videos, and I personally believe that I should start doing that now, since voice acting is easily one of the most important parts about storytelling. Sure, narrative and dialogue is key, but if the voices that we have to hear for the next few hours sound insufferable, then it makes it harder to truly appreciate. For instance, we do love The Last of Us' story and its superb dialogue, but the glue that held everything around it together was the spectacular acting. Troy Baker and Ashley Johnson just are Joel and Ellie. They didn't make the story great, but they carried the story with them to make it even better. Now, this isn't to say that Spyro 2's voice acting is comparable. One game definitely has better acting than the other, but I can't help but adore Spyro 2's voice acting. It's not believable or anything, but you can tell that every single person in the recording booth had a lot of fun voicing the characters. There's just such a likable amount of enthusiasm to the performances. Tom Kenny is also just the perfect voice for Spyro. No disrespect to Carlos Alazraqui, but Tom Kenny just is Spyro. There's no other voice actor that has portrayed the character better than him. Greg Berger is fantastic as Hunter and especially Ripto. I love Melissa Disney's performance as Elora, and Milton James as Moneybags is just the best. Oh yeah, Moneybags, I will get to his own segment of the video soon. The voices of the NPC characters are also fun. Do it. It's memorable. This might be more of a me thing due to how many times I fucking played this game, but I can remember just about every single cutscene in this game word for word. I don't even know whether or not it was just from the humor or the performances, or maybe even both, but no joke, I was talking along with like more than half of the cutscenes because I knew exactly what the characters were going to say. Like with this cutscene right here where I was just going like,
That Ripto has caused enough damage. All his meddling has cost me a fortune. If it wasn't for Spyro, I'd be bankrupt. If Ripto were here, I'd give him a piece of my mind. In fact, I'd give him a lot more than that. I was a champion bantamweight boxer at the university, and I still know a few moves. Take that, and that. Boo. Ah! Why you?
3. Ripto. He's Ripto for fuck's sake. What else am I supposed to say? I mean, I already talked about Greg Berger's fantastic performance, but there is also the fact that every single cutscene with him is just an absolute fucking treat. The scenes where he and Spyro talk smack towards each other are just entertainment at its finest. Honestly, I wish there were more cutscenes with these two clashing. Easily some of my favorite cutscenes in the whole game. His name was also created with what Spyro's name looks like in Japanese when looked at as English letters. I'm not joking, that's seriously how he got his name. That's fucking brilliant. His design is just perfect too. One look immediately tells you that he is a character that tries way too hard to be intimidating, and I love it. However, I do know that this is not everyone's cup of tea. I've seen loads of people complaining that Ripto is a bad villain because he isn't intimidating. I do get it, but at the same time, Ripto not being intimidating is kind of the point. I get the impression that Insomniac was fully aware of how dumb of a character he was and just decided to roll with it. I mean, he loses his main weapon the moment we first encounter him. Are you seriously gonna look me in the eyes and tell me that this was supposed to be taken seriously? Now, I am aware that there will be people attempting to counter-argue by saying something like, but I thought you said you understood and agreed with the people criticizing Ripto, so let me rephrase this. I do agree with people complaining about how the game
tells you that Ripto did a lot of damage to Avalar without showing Ripto doing anything or commanding an army of some sort, but I don't agree with people claiming that Ripto is a bad villain just because he is not threatening. I will admit that Ripto as a villain could have been improved, but I like how he is this character that no one can take seriously, except for the in-game characters. It makes him stand out from other video game villains to me.
Anyway, I've officially droned on for long enough about this game's story. I think it's about time for me to start analyzing the game itself, because there are way better reasons for me to love this game than just its story.
But the controls and abilities segment is not exactly gonna showcase what I love about this game. Don't get me wrong though, there is still stuff I can praise here. To start, let's take a look at the base control style. Nothing much has changed from how the first game handles. There are extra things added and improved from before, along with feeling smoother, but the controls are mostly identical. But I never saw this as a bad thing because I never found Spyro's turning to be as clunky as people said it was. Sure, split-second turning will always be better for platformers, but in collectathons, it's never really required? Question mark? As long as you feel like you are in control, slow turning isn't too bad. Not exactly ideal, I suppose, but nowhere near a deal breaker. But again, there are improvements and additions here, so let's check them out. Charging feels a bit better. The turning feels a little more tight and allows you to round corners more easily. The normal jumping arc also feels a bit better and feels like you get more distance with it. The useless rolling mechanic from the first game was also gone entirely.
Let's be honest, is anyone, even the most die-hard fans of the first game, even remotely upset about this being removed in the sequel? I doubt it.
But then there's the only part of the original moveset that did get a major improvement. That being the jump height while charging being vastly increased and not that much lower than the standard jump. Now you did have one advantage with the jump height from 1, that being the fact that you can gain a lot of speed by simply jumping while charging constantly, but then increasing the charged jumping height just gives platforming a nicer flow. The camera also feels miles better, and that is down to this game's active mode. The camera not only adjusts itself based on your movement, but it moves a lot faster while using L2 and R2. Sadly, this is the only active camera mode in the trilogy that works this way. But of course, I am ignoring the elephant in the room when it comes to Spyro's moveset in the sequel. The addition that was just as effective for this franchise as how the spin dash was for the Sonic franchise. Ladies and gentlemen, I introduce you to the hover. If you are not fully confident in making a large jump or just simply want to stop moving while gliding, the hover was always there for you. Just simply pressing the triangle button will make Spyro use the last of his wing strength to lift himself up slightly before coming to a complete halt. Much better than just plummeting down. It's the goddamn hover move, what else can I say about it? We're not done yet though, cause there's more. Because now we have unlockable abilities. I really dig how Insomniac wanted to expand on Spyro's abilities by allowing him to swim, climb, and head bash. The climbing is definitely the dumbest and most underwhelming move, but I do respect it for allowing Spyro to properly scale walls this time. The head bash, on the other hand, is a great Spyro version of Mario's ground pound. It allows you to break slightly stronger objects in order to get more gems. But then we have the swimming, and mamma fucking mia! These are no exaggeration, the greatest swimming controls of all time. I have yet to have played a game that even comes close to being as great, as perfect as these. While underwater, Spyro has the same amount of mobility as he does on land, with just 2 differences. 1, you can't use regular fire breath move, and 2, you use the D-pad/analog stick to steer and use the X button to move. You can charge underwater, and it is just as responsive as it is on land. You can also stay underwater for as long as you like. This is easily the best upgrade that you get in the game, and it's the very first one. What a phenomenal first impression, especially when there are plenty of instances where swimming is required. In most platformers it sounds like hell, but in Spyro 2 it's fun all because of the tight responsive swimming controls. It doesn't do any of the other annoying things the swimming controls are known to do in platformers and collectathons. They don't slow you down to a crawl, you're not forced to tap buttons constantly, and there's no air meter. Yes!
But that's still not all!
You can also pick things up with your mouth and then spit them right back out. That rhymed! For as weird of an addition as it might sound, it makes for some really great missions in this game. Oh yeah, you can also get temporary superpowers like fireballs, which you can also use underwater, invincibility, supercharging, and super jump, given to you by these gates here. More on these in the gameplay segment.
Now I am already getting very positive about this game. We are already noticing improvements from 1, and spoiler alert, it's only going up from here. From now to the near end, this video will completely go from being a Spyro 2 review to a Spyro 2 love letter. So, let's do this.
The gameplay loop in Spyro 2 has been completely altered from the first game. The only similarities are that you are still exploring in sandboxes collecting gems, and that's it. That's the only thing that stayed the same, because instead of the main collectibles being crystallized dragons, they are now these cool objects called orbs. These are handled way better than the crystal dragons from 1. Why? Because the issue that I always had with the crystallized dragons from Spyro 1 was the fact that you didn't need to put any effort into getting them. You just walk up to them and then you win. Again, you sometimes do need to try and find them, but that's the only thing you really need to worry about. So what do the orbs do differently?
Well, allow me to introduce you to my brand new TV show called Why Spyro 2's Gameplay is Better Than Spyro 1's. Trademark. Best tune in quick, because this is going to be a one-time airing on a one-time episode on a one-time show. After this, it's never airing again. So enjoy.
Now, let's begin. Let's start with what you have to do to get most of the orbs. Usually, you will need to interact with one of Spyro 2's fantastic new additions, NPCs. Unless you count the Balloon Man, NPCs were non-existent in the first game. I never really minded the lack of NPCs in Spyro 1, but Spyro 2's addition of them ultimately makes the worlds feel more alive. The NPCs are the ones that provide you with the orbs, but if you want them, which you obviously should, you're gonna have to earn them. This is where we talk about why this game's gameplay is so good. To earn an orb, you have to do a mission or challenge given to you by the NPC. You actually need to put an effort into getting these things. You can't just find them now. No, you have to actually try. Insomniac also clearly wanted to put more variety, and miraculously, they managed to maintain a flawless balance in spicing up the gameplay with extra little gimmicks, while taking advantage of Spyro's control style. So there would be missions where you would need to take advantage of Spyro's charging mechanic. So for example, this chasing mission with these lamp thieves. It pretty much tests you with your charging. Oh yeah, that reminds me, this is the only time that the classic thieves make an appearance in this game. Other than that, this is the only game in the trilogy that doesn't have them, and I don't think anyone really cares. Back to my original point. There could also be missions where you'd need to platform your way to some place, or there could be a mission that utilizes your new spit things out mechanic, or we could have a mission that combines both of them, but then we get to the extra gameplay styles that Spyro 2 has. I personally believe that this game's extra gimmicks to play around with is the example of variety done perfectly. In my opinion, that is. Is it variety for the sake of variety? I guess, but it is very much needed in order to keep the game feeling fresh. Because if you spent 5.5 hours of your life using your default moveset to clear every mission, then that would probably make the game boring by, let's say, the 3rd hour. That's where the new gimmicks come in to save the day. New control styles for variety can enhance the game when used in moderation, and that's exactly what this game does. The balance between normal usage of Spyro gameplay and vehicle gameplay is done perfectly. A vehicle shows up exactly when it needs to, and there's just enough to make it feel fun without being bloated. I'd say that most, if not all of them, are fun to control, don't outstay their welcome, and can make a level more memorable as a result. I really can't think of any other word to describe Spyro 2's gameplay other than it's perfect. Spyro gameplay peaked here as far as I'm concerned, and we're not even done with this section yet. It's very hard for me to list down missions that I like the most. If anything, it would be easier for me to list down the missions that I don't like that much.
since there are only a couple that I'm not really all that fussed about. This mission in Robotica Farms is a bit boring. You just chase after flies and kill them, nothing complicated. The Gear Grinder Thieves mission in Hurricos is quite repetitive and boring. But then there's easily my least favorite mission in the game, that being the Alchemist in Fracture Hills. It's not that hard or anything. Once you memorize where the Alchemist is going, it's a cakewalk. I don't like it because it's just so slow and so boring. But almost every other mission is fun and lasts for about as long as they need to. My favorites are shooting down UFO sheep, chasing down Bamo, the Lava Lizard Caveman Challenge, saving Juliet, exterminating the lava monsters, hockey, this tile puzzle, saving this hula girl, and finally, trouble with the trolley, eh? Come on, it's not that hard, guys. Anyway, I think that I've spent more than enough time with the orbs, so what about the other things? The other main collectibles are the talismans, which are actually the first collectibles recommended to you, and they are all magical. The reason why is because they are required for entering boss levels. Yep, this time you have to play every single main level in order to get to the next hub world, and for some reason people complain about this. I really don't understand why people have an issue with this. What's wrong with the devs wanting you to experience every main level? Getting all the talismans isn't too big of an ask, and it's every main level, so if you don't want to play any of the speedways, you don't have to. They're more meant for completion. I personally love the inclusion of talismans. They again give you a reason to play every main level and beat every main level, but they're also quite cool to look at. I really love the designs of these things. If anything, I wish that there were more of them. Unfortunately, there are none in the final world, which is the most obvious sign that this game was most likely, most certainly, and most clearly slightly rushed a little bit. More so when you realize that the level count in Winter Tundra is pitifully smaller than the level count in Summer Forest and especially Autumn Plains. The last main collectibles to mention are souls. I'm not joking. Whenever you kill an enemy in this game, you kill them so hard that you literally capture their souls. Or should I say, spirit particles. But I'm not calling them that because it's easier to call them souls, and that's pretty much what they are anyway. This means that unlike in Spyro 1, you don't get gems out of defeating enemies, and this is the only game in the trilogy, and I think the series in general does this. If I'm gonna be honest, I've always preferred this system over the previous one. Why? Because I feel like you have a much better reason to kill enemies now. See, I think there are already enough gems to collect as is, through breakable baskets and vases, and sometimes these new question mark vases that teleport closer and closer to the beginning of the level before they completely break. So making defeating enemies its own little task, I think, makes things more interesting. Because collecting souls powers these gates that give you the new powers that I mentioned earlier, so you can do things in the level that you weren't able to. There's also the spring power that allows you to jump super high in order to access the rest of the level. Things overall feel like they have more of a purpose this time around. Oh yeah, and speaking of things having more of a purpose, that's also what the gems have in this game. More purpose. And that purpose is all because of a new character that went on to be one of Spyro's most infamous. Oh god, Moneybags. Oh boy. For the two of you who don't know, Moneybags is basically a personification of modern Disney. That being only wanting and caring about money. He doesn't even try to hide it either. Despite his infamy though, I love Moneybags. He is without a doubt one of my favorite Spyro characters. He is just such a dick that you cannot help but love him. He arguably has the funniest dialogue in the whole game. I mean, how can you hear any of these lines without at least cracking one smile?
Sorry, Spyro. I'd love to teach you how to swim underwater, but not as much as I'd love to take your treasure. Yes, the sparkling beauty of those gems seems to have jogged my memory. Legend has it that there is a portal to Zephyr here, and legend also has it that I know how to activate it. Furthermore, as I recall, the legend mentioned something about me activating it for a small fee. No one's been through that portal in years. I thought I'd never find a sucker. I mean, you're a shrewd customer, Spyro. I would love to let you enter this speedway free of charge, Spyro. Love to. One last speedway adventure for you, Spyro? It's not that expensive, you know.
But he's in the gameplay section for a reason. Moneybags is not just a lovable asshole, he's also a great gameplay mechanic. Because again, he gives you a reason to collect gems. They're not that hard to collect as is, so I'm completely behind this.
especially when these are to unlock necessary parts of the game, whether that be entire levels or the unlockable moves. Yes, this is how you get them.
But this is where we talk about yet another infamous part about Spyro 2. These moves are great, but also result into something that people don't like. Backtracking.
In a couple of levels of the first two worlds, there would be times where you can't get the rest of the gems or orbs, all because you don't have the new moves, whether it was swimming, climbing, or head bashing. Now listen, while I wouldn't list this as the best part of the game, I really think people are just overreacting about this game's backtracking. Now sure, your soul count is reset every time you re-enter a level, but that's only kind of an issue in one of the levels, and that's it. That, and do you want to know how many levels you actually need to backtrack to? 4. That's it. 4. I mean, yes, you also can't entirely complete Summer Forest, but at the end of the day, the times where you need to go back to complete these 4 levels can just take you 20 minutes to do, and I don't just mean individually, I mean all 4 combined. Because that's how long it took for me to do it in all 4 backtracking required levels. 20 minutes out of a near 6-hour-long playthrough. That's not even 10%. It really doesn't take that long. Also, though it's my least favorite mission in the game, I will actually defend the Alchemist a little bit here, because I hear people complain all the time about how if you do this mission on your first visit without the head bash, and get the head bash later to do the mission right after the Alchemist, you would have to do it all over again. To be fair, it is a little weird that Insomniac didn't make your progress save after the escort mission, but I have a crazy idea for you. I mean fucking crazy. Ludicrous idea. If you don't want to do the Alchemist escort mission twice, then just don't do it on your first visit to Fracture Hills. Done. Problem fucking solved. This is exactly what I did in my playthrough of this game for this video, and something that I've been doing since literally my second ever playthrough of this game. In my first playthrough of this game, it did happen to me, but once I knew that you could just do this mission later after getting the head bash move, I never did this mission on my first visit ever again. How come no one ever— Anyway, rant over. Backtracking isn't that bad in this game. We're almost done with the gameplay, there's just 2 more things to list. Spyro 2 is the very first Spyro game and Insomniac game to ever have skill points. Basically a pre-7th gen version of Xbox achievements and PlayStation trophies. I've always liked the idea of these little extra challenges added in games nowadays. It's a pretty smart way to actually give the player something else to do after finishing the main game. I don't think skill points in Spyro 2 are as fleshed out as they are in the first 4 Ratchet & Clank games, but they are still really fun to go after and can even be challenging, like having to do boss fights without taking damage or finishing a flight level very fast, particularly this one being quite tricky to do, considering that you have to execute it flawlessly and just barely make it. Keep in mind, I've played this game more times than I'm probably supposed to. So yeah, these are fun and give you something else to do after finishing the base game, and you get rewarded for it, which I will talk about in the ending segment. Last but not least, let's briefly talk about the enemies. Like most sequels, the enemy variety is better than last time. The enemy designs get more creative and overall more memorable. We have lizards, goats, idols, ice things, fire things, bird bombers, stereotypes, and farm animals with gadgets. Their behavior is also more varied than before, with bird bombers bombing you, the stereotypes either shooting or going, but just like last time, they in general do a good job at taking advantage of Spyro's moveset. But I just love their designs so much. They have so much more personality compared to what we saw in the first game. Ted Price said it himself, it's okay to go crazy, and crazy they sure did get.
But at last, the gameplay section has officially come to its epic conclusion. I think that this part of the video highlights exactly what I love about this game. But of course we have... I can't count. We have 5 parts left before the conclusion. The thing is, I am not even close to being done to praising this game, so onwards.
The level design was the first game's biggest strength in my opinion, so naturally, even that would be improved in the sequel. But before we get into that, we need to also gush over the hub worlds in this game.
I adore Spyro 2's hub worlds. Despite there being less, all 3 of them have such a distinct look to them. These are all based on seasons, summer, autumn, and winter. Although for years people speculated that there was originally going to be a 4th homeworld based on spring. A theory turning out to be untrue after Insomniac themselves confirmed that they never really planned for a spring homeworld. But they did at least put flowers and glimmer to make it kind of look like spring, so I guess that makes Glimmer the first homeworld then? I guess? The perfect definition to quality over quantity. All of them have just this serene, calm, enchanting atmosphere. These are the only tracks in the game like this, and it's just perfect. I love it so much. I love areas in games like these where you can chill in between the action, to either explore or just mess around and see what you can do. What boundaries should I cross? What glitches can I perform? This game is very fun to break sometimes. Autumn Plains is the obvious talking point when it comes to this. It's very big with a lot of levels, along with a massive chunk of it being a castle on a mountain. I think most people, including me, have spent a lot of time in this particular area wandering around and just messing about, even when there are no more gems or orbs to collect. Speaking of which, this is the only time where you don't have to work for the orbs. Apart from a single tutorial mission, all of the orbs are placed in hidden areas for you to collect in the Spyro 1 style. I like this because it stays in sync with the idea of these being places to relax in before you go on to the next level. There's no enemies here anyway, and at least all of these are hidden well, so you still need to try while searching for them. I really love Summer Forest for how luscious it looks, especially for PS1 in 1999. Winter Tundra also has a slightly unnerving feel to its track, making it feel like we really are at the home stretch in this adventure. But then we get to the actual levels in these areas, and wow. These are some of my favorite levels in any game ever. They all have a unique, distinct look to them. They all drip with personality, and all of them complement the new gameplay style. I can see why people prefer the levels in 1 though, given that these ones are less heavy on platforming and more heavy on collecting gems and earning orbs. That, and it does make less sense with how the levels connect to the hubs in terms of theming. It's quite hard to believe how Hurricos would be connected to Summer Forest, Crystal Glacier being connected to Autumn Plains, and Metropolis being connected to Winter Tundra. But platforming is still something that does exist in these levels, and still quite fun. And as for inconsistent theming, I honestly just don't care. There are only 2 levels that I don't really care for, and those 2 are Fracture Hills and Shady Oasis. Shady Oasis looks bland and has some of the less interesting missions in the game. Fracture Hills is just a simple circle with my least favorite mission in the whole game. The supercharged section is fun though, but more than half of this game's level count is absolutely legendary. I can go on 4 days about some of the incredible levels in this game.
I mean, really, these levels are so good that maybe I should rank them. Maybe I should rank them. Maybe I should rank them. Maybe I should rank
Idle Springs, Skilo's Badlands, Hurricos, Scorch, Mystic Marsh, Aquaria Towers, and Metropolis. All of these levels and more are just good freaking god! These places are just something else. Jokes aside, I will definitely make a sequel to my Spyro 1 level ranking video by ranking every level in this game, so I'll save my more in-depth thoughts on these levels for later. For now, let's just move on to this game's flight levels. Although now they are called speedways, and though using the word flight is more self-explanatory, speedway does sound cooler. The only reason I have to mention them again is that even these levels have their own orb challenges to do. These are just simple minigames, but I still think they're all fun and give you something extra to do after doing the already very fun main challenge, which is just as fun as it was in the previous game. Just adding extra layers to this already very tasty cake. Last thing to complement the levels on are this game's intro and outro cutscenes. In this game, and unfortunately only in this game, there will be cutscenes playing to show off each level, both before and after you play a level. I love the fuck out of these cutscenes, man. They're just so much fun to watch and also make the levels feel more alive, you know? It shows you that these brand new inhabitant characters have their own lives, both before and after Spyro visited them. I will probably say that my favorite of all these cutscenes is probably the outro cutscene for Colossus. It's just very funny, with a little bit of dark humor sprinkled in.
Spyro 2's levels are fantastic, and I really cannot wait to rank them all in a video. Now, we must go on to the boss battle. Ugh.
I'm just gonna cut to the chase. Spyro 1 has the worst boss fights I've ever fought in a game, don't at me. Apart from one exception, they all rely on the same strategy. That is, chase them and flame them. I really can't be asked to knock down all those points that fans keep making again, so just watch my Spyro 1 video for more context, and if you're going to leave a comment, unless you have a new point that I haven't heard, don't be surprised or disappointed if I do not end up replying to it. Alright? Anyway, Spyro 2's boss fights are a million times better than the boss fights from Spyro 1. Unlike the bosses in that game, Spyro 2's boss fights take legit effort to beat, and in some cases even be a tad bit hard. Just like with the hub worlds, the number of boss fights has been cut in half. But just like the hub worlds, just because the first game has more doesn't mean it did it better. So let's review each of these 3 bosses individually. Crush is the perfect first boss fight. A good balance between not being too easy and not being too hard. He starts out with attacking you with some shockwaves that he can use while standing on these pads. Every time he moves from one pad to another is when you get your chance to attack. You flame him, and then out of anger, he slams his club on the floor so hard that parts of the ceiling crumble down on him. After doing this 3 times, he switches up his tactics to attacking you with fireballs. You do this phase the same way. After that, he starts using both attacks against you. Not only that, but when you attack him, he acts more aggressive and chases you. You run away until he eventually slams his club on the floor and gets himself hurt. This is a great boss fight through and through. Not only is it better than every other boss fight from 1 combined, but it does a really good job with pacing by easing the player in as Crush's attacks get more aggressive. The music in this boss fight also goes extremely hard. One of my favorite video game tracks, honestly. To the point where I use this for an old intro for my videos. Those videos are temporarily private though. The second boss is Gulp. This is one of the more well-liked yet infamous bosses in Spyro. Everyone talks about just how hard this boss is. I'm not really surprised that this boss fight has that reputation. When I first played this game, I too found this boss to be extremely difficult, to the point where I lost around 15 lives to this green douchebag. Obviously, this ain't a challenge for me anymore, but it is likely that first-time players would definitely struggle here. But despite that, this boss fight is fucking awesome. Since there are no real particular phases here, there are 3 different items you can use to hurt Gulp, which come from eggs being dropped by pterodactyls. Alright. Explosive metal barrels, bombs, and rockets. Gulp has his own lasers to shoot at you, and can even run towards you to crush you. He can also use your personal weapons against you. I really like how while dodging the lasers, you can't just keep running away. You actually have to move around all over the place to try and bait the lasers. I love this fight. It's just refreshing to have a boss fight that can actually test you a little. You can also get a skill point for shooting Ripto in his stupid fat face. Worth it. Oh yeah, speaking of which, here's Ripto. The final boss with Ripto is truly remarkable. There's nothing I would change about this boss fight. It's just perfect. I know this is like my 3rd time using this word, but that just goes to show just how great this game is. From the way it's designed, to the presentation, to the brilliantly insane music to accompany it, 10 out of 10 climax here. As well as the cutscene leading into this boss fight featuring, like, the greatest fucking line in video game history.
If you want to test that power crystal, why don't you try it on me? I'll stand still, I promise.
I like that idea. Dragon, you've just sealed your fate!
We start out with a one-on-one fight on the ground with Ripto. Damage him by collecting 3 orbs to gain a superpower. One is supercharge, one is fireballs, and the other are these green fireballs, which are entirely exclusive to this boss fight. But don't think that this will be easy, since you have to dodge massive fireballs and try to get to the orbs before he does, because he could use those abilities against you. Second phase has Ripto using a metal gulp. This does give you a small advantage, considering that him using a metal gulp makes him into a bigger target, so attacking him shouldn't be a problem, but everything else is tweaked in Ripto's favor. Fireballs are way harder to dodge, with you needing to be more strategic with dodging them. Now that Ripto's riding on a giant monster, this makes him way faster and makes it more likely for him to get 3 to attack you. And then we get the final phase. You and Ripto, flying above lava, fight to the fucking death. It's just a matter of who takes down who, and who will reign victorious. You have infinite flight and infinite fireballs. All you have to do is burn the hell out of Ripto while he uses his last stitching effort to survive. After spending some time kicking his ass, you did it. You fucking did it. You knocked that sack of shit into a hot boiling bowl of lava. Congrats. Ripto really is giving up.
might wanna move around a little? No, you just gonna accept your fate? Alright. Spyro 2's boss fights are so fucking great. They're just as good as accepting your fate. Yeah! I mean it though. Spyro 2's boss fights are goated as fuck. They are so much better than the shit that was in Spyro 1. It's almost as if they were actual fights. I know. Who would have guessed? There's also a mini-boss in Metropolis against an ox, but that fight doesn't count as a true boss fight. More like just a special, beefed-up enemy. Now for this game's visual presentation. This game came out in 1999 and still looks really nice. Putting low-poly models aside, this is a gorgeous PS1 game with so much personality, color, and life, thanks to having a wider variety of level themes. The animation during cutscenes has also seen such a drastic improvement from before. In the first game, Spyro was by far the character with the most amount of effort put into the animation aspect. Understandable, it was their first time attempting to animate in 3D, and if there is any character in the game that should have the best animation, would undoubtedly have to be the main character. But unfortunately, this does mean that all of the other dragons, and even the main villain, would have very simple looking animation. Not bad, but not impressive either, since Crash 2 came out the year before and had better animation overall. Here, just about every character has an equal amount of quality in the animation department. The lip syncing is good, and you can often tell what the characters are thinking just by looking at their eyes. The characters just feel more alive and have a lot more personality to them. I also really love Spyro's angry expression in this game. This is the only game in the entire series where Spyro has a never-ending frown on his face. From what I've heard, Insomniac did this to make Spyro look badass, and I couldn't agree more. This does make Spyro look badass. I also adore the very Muppet look to all of the characters. This is actually a rare time where limitations actually help. It just looks so charming, and the character designs in general are fantastic. Way more memorable than anything in the first game. I recognize that the first game goes for a more medieval fantasy style, while the sequel opts to go for a more cartoony style, but the simpler and more colorful look is just visually pleasing to me. I guess it does depend on what you prefer, but I think Spyro 2 does a great job with improving from Spyro 1's visuals. I suppose that the only real complaint that I can really think about is the fact that even though Spyro has a new charging animation, for some reason while supercharging, it switches back to the Spyro 1 model with the old charging animation. Am I the only person who noticed? Please, anyone in the comments, tell me if you also happen to have noticed this. Even with this visual quirk, this game still looks great. Just like the soundtrack. Spyro 1's OST was great, but Spyro 2's is just... wow. Bring Stuart Copeland back, have him make the music the exact same genius way he did before, have a wider variety of instruments, give the tracks in general more of a punch, and kablam! We have one of my favorite video game soundtracks to date. The music in this game is so indescribable and oh, it's some banging music. I have to just play the music to you right now because I
Wasn't that just the best? It was, wasn't it?
Alright. We're here. The ending. The ending. In all honesty, this is actually where I will complain a little bit more about this game, since this is where I think the game could have used a bit more development time. But there are plenty of things in this ending portion that I do like.
So after defeating Gulp, Spyro is believed to have rid Avalar of Ripto. Allura, Hunter, and the Professor are just about finished with the Super Portal until...
So, you thought you had gotten rid of me? Well, I'm afraid not. I persuaded that fat bear Moneybags to sell me a few bombs.
Ripto decides that this crystal was to be used for his new scepter since... you know. Hunter tries to get the crystal off Ripto.
Hey, give that back!
But to no avail. It's up to Spyro to conquer the last 5 levels. Yeah, for as much as I love Winter Tundra, it is ultimately brought down a tad by not only how small it is compared to Summer Forest and Autumn Plains, but also for lacking in content. There's only 4 main levels and 1 speedway, bringing the total to 5. What you do have to play is still stellar, but I wouldn't be shocked if someone felt like something was missing. Hell, I feel like something is missing. For as much as I do love the levels that we already have, I do wish there were at least a couple more in this game. We get enough orbs to face Ripto, and after a kick-ass final boss, we are rewarded with a cutscene where Allura thanks Spyro for his efforts in Avalar. She then rightfully calls out Moneybags for all of his selfish deeds during this game, and thus you are given back all of the gems you have given Moneybags. The Professor manages to activate the portal for Spyro to go on his long-awaited vacation to Dragon Shores, ending the game. Except not, because there is still some shit to do. After beating the main game, you unlock the final level, Dragon Shores. This is another time where I have to complain. Apart from the completion reward found here, Dragon Shores is easily the worst level in the game for me. All it is just a minigame collection. That's it. No gems, no orbs, no souls, no enemies, no talismans. Just minigames. Nasty's loot was a good final level, and in my opinion, the one time where the game's simplicity worked. I like how this was the game's way for rewarding the player for all of that hard work, allowing the player to just relax, collect the remaining gems, and then watch the 120% cutscene. Speaking of which, that is another thing. Spyro 2 is the only game in the trilogy with no completion cutscene. It's also the one game in the trilogy to have its completion percentage not go above 100. Ain't that strange? In my opinion, Dragon Shores should have just copied what Nasty's loot did. Instead of having a theme park, how about a nice big beach to explore? Nothing to do other than collect the remaining gems, maybe have dragon NPCs. After collecting all of the gems, it should then reward you with a brand new cutscene. Maybe an epilogue of some sort, which is what you get for collecting all the skill points. Kinda. You unlock this book titled Epilogue, and it's a bunch of pictures showing what the characters in Avalar have been up to, along with showing cut enemies from the game. It's cute, but I personally would have preferred this to be a cutscene. There is, however, one last thing to talk about that is actually worth it. That is the actual 100% reward. You see, you don't have to actually get all of the gems and orbs in order to access Dragon Shores or view the epilogue. But there is one thing in Dragon Shores that does unlock by getting all of the gems and orbs. This door right here will not open unless you have done just that. If you have, the door will open to reveal a Super Fireball power-up gate. At first glance, this might seem quite anticlimactic, but don't be fooled. This isn't a timed power-up. It's permanent, which makes getting boss skill points basically no problem. But what if you have already done that? No fear, because something else is here. If you exit out of the game without shutting off your console and start a new game, you can replay the entire game like this. Even though I never bother playing the game like this, because I always prefer to play this game originally as intended, this is still a great reward. I ended up playing a bit of it for this video while trying and failing to speedrun it. I may know how to use the double jump glitch, but I haven't quite mastered it yet. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention this awesome little glitch exploit that gives Spyro a full double jump. I don't use
this too much. Again, I prefer playing as intended, but it is very fun to break this game sometimes. Overall, I'm kind of split on this game's ending. Half of it's great, but the other half is just eh. But it gets the job done for ending off what I believe to be Insomniac's magnum opus. Yes, I'm saying it. This is Insomniac's best game. This isn't the only 10 out of 10 that they made, but this is by far my favorite of their work, and again, my favorite video game ever made. It's not perfect, obviously. Hell, I wouldn't even say that this is objectively the best game that I've played, but it's the best game ever made, to me at least, you know? Unlike the previous reviews, this one wasn't about whether or not this game held up. It's why this game held up. Why this game always meant something to me. Why would I put this game at the top of my list above so many other masterpieces? Why? Simple. Because this was the game that made me love collectathons. This was the game that made me want to play even more of Insomniac's work. This was the game that made me into a Spyro fan. You know those N64 fans that swear by Mario 64? Well, Spyro 2 is my Mario 64. I know that in the last video I said that my favorite video game franchise was Super Mario, and it still is, but Spyro 2 is the game that manages to surpass all of the other Mario games, at least for me. I know that this segment has been more rambly than usual, but that's because this game is just so special to me. Despite me not being born when the game came out, I didn't even play this game when I was a little kid, which hey, can show just how high of a quality this game is. The fact that it was able to grab an older kid out of its generation. That says something. Now look where we are. Now I'm only months away from essentially starting adulthood. Pretty wild, isn't it? Okay, we better wrap this up before I bore everyone. Although we all know what score this game is getting anyway. On the scale of quality, Spyro 2 Ripto's Rage will receive the perfect score of 10 out of 10. Take it.
This video was quite the task. Not just because this has definitely broken my channel record for longest video, but also because out of all of the videos I've made, this is the one that I want to hold up the most. A video that I'll be able to look back on in 5 years' time and say to myself, yeah, I did good. The next and final Spyro video for a while will be on the third and final game in the series made by Insomniac, Year of the Dragon, which funnily enough is what this year was. But I highly doubt I'm going to be able to get that video done considering how long it took for me to make this video. But this will still likely be the final Take It or Leave It episode for 2024. So if a Spyro 3 video isn't released this year, then it'll at least be an opener for 2025. This was Max Ride we just watched. See you on the other side.